Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is your PGA Championship preview. I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm delighted, as I was ahead of the Masters, to be joined by oddschecker's very own tipster Niall Lyons and Justin Ray from 21st Group. Justin, you join us at 8 a.m. your time. That's right, isn't it?
Coffee is brewed. We're ready to go. We're fired up. I don't need much caffeine the week of major championships, but yes, it is bright and early. We're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 8 a.m.
Well, I'm kind of normally the same. Where a week of a major championship, my mind can't really focus on anything else. But as a big football fan, Niall will know, when my team, Oxford United, are in a playoff final on Saturday, thinking about the PGA Championship and poring over as many strokes gained stats as I can possibly find is my one way to keep my mind off my trip to Wembley on Saturday. So I'm delving deep into this. Niall, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. In terms of football, anyway, nothing exciting happening in my world.
Manchester United's best performance of the season, wasn't it, on Sunday?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what'll happen? But interesting game tonight too, to be fair. See if the title race can be turned on its head.
Yeah, it should be interesting. But we're not here to talk about football this time. We're here to talk about the second major championship of the year. Last time we spoke, as I say, it was ahead of the Masters at Augusta. And Justin, what do you think we could take away from that weekend, apart from the fact that Scottie Scheffler is quite good at golf and even better at winning?
Yeah, aside from the fact that the chasm between Scotty and everybody else seems to keep getting bigger, and he just reaffirmed it when he got the win the following week at Harbour Town, which to me may have been even more impressive to do that coming off a Masters victory. I think the biggest takeaway for me is Ludwig Hebert in his first major championship start, nearly getting the job done. The only guy between him and the green jacket was Scottie Scheffler. I thought that was just so impressive. Max Homa, incredibly impressive as well. For a guy through the first 16 major championships of his career, never finished in the top 10. Now he's done it in back-to-back major starts. Shows that maybe he's getting a little bit more comfortable in his own skin, and maybe that's, come with growing a little bit more, comfortable in that spotlight and that big stage as he's become one of the elite players in the sport. And then I thought Bryson DeChambeau was really interesting. I mean, not a lot of talk about Bryson going into the Masters. Augusta National, kind of his white whale that he's been, trying to he famously said that it was a par 68 for him back in the day, and then I think since then he hadn't shot 68 at Augusta, so he may have put a little bit of the golfing gods on notice there. But his performance, I know he didn't have it much late he wasn't much of a factor late, but to see him perform arguably the best he ever has at the Masters was pretty impressive too.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. I thought it was noticeable the way he shot his best round on the first day. The easiest day of the four and the softest the golf course was the four as well. I was kind of telling everybody who would listen after that Thursday. I know a few people who had backed him. I was like, I think you need to cash out now. The firmer and faster this golf course becomes, this chipping and putting action, it's just not going to cut it around here. I find it very hard to believe that he'll ever win around Augusta, just unless he kind of creates a bit more feel around his hands and that kind of action. But yeah, once again, and we'll probably get into it here in the PGA, his chances on a long, softish golf course. But the live golfers performed well once again. I think there was 4 in the top 10. Obviously, Koepka's still the only one who's won a major championship since the live golf tour started. So will we see that change soon, or will it just be Koepka, the only one who can win a major once again? But Fleetwood, another top 10 in the major, not many more consistent than him in major championships these days as well, so he could be another factor this week. But yeah, it was a very good Masters for once, maybe until the back nine once Scheffler skipped clear. But it was great to see Aberg get right into it just round the turn when he birdied the ninth, that great putt across the green, to get within 1 or 2 shots at the time. I was so excited to watch that back nine, and then it just didn't materialise. But it was good up until then anyway.
It's funny, it feels like so many Masters are kind of there's the whole build up, and then from kind of Thursday through to Sunday afternoon, it's a bit of a slow burn, then it bursts into life down the stretch on Sunday. This was exactly the flip of that, where there was so much drama, so much intrigue. There was on Saturday. I think it was one of the best Saturdays we've ever seen at Augusta before, when the players were finding it tough. Friday night as well. And then, as you say, Niall, suddenly when it normally gets interesting, Scotty just kind of casually pulled away. And the thing that seemed to get lost in that was that, the player who is the best tee to green by miles in the field that weekend, it wasn't even the best part of his game. He still won the way that he did. Absolutely remarkable stuff. You talked there, Niall, about the this being a different test for Bryson. We'll get on to him specifically later on, but you also mentioned that it was soft early on at Augusta on the Thursday after the weather delay as well. Forecast suggesting it could be a soft one at Valhalla again this weekend.
Yeah, there was rain already at the weekend. There's been rain in the lead-in, and as far as I know today, it's going to dump a lot of rain on the golf course. I'd be surprised if the golfers aren't pulled off the course sometime later today. I certainly know a few who have been out early, who are going out early today to try and get some practice in. One difference is from 2014 is that they've changed the grass here to Soja grass, and typically that there is a fair bit more receptive to the rain than other types of grass. It drains better as well, so there's still a chance that it may be very, very soft for the first couple of days, but as the weather improves over the weekend, and I think it is meant to improve, maybe a slight bit of chance of rain early on Friday, but it will be soft, very soft to start, and maybe the course superintendents and stuff will be able to get it into a bit firmer shape come the weekend.
And for Justin, for those who we've seen some major tournaments over the years at Valhalla, we've also seen the Ryder Cup of Valhalla in recent times as well, or fairly recent times. For those who aren't aware of the course, what can you tell us about it and the challenges that it'll pose to the field?
Well, couple what Niall just said about the soft conditions and the rain. It's a long golf course to get started anyway. I mean, they've lengthened it by some 150 yards since 2014 when Rory won here at the PGA Championship. Looking at the par threes, every single one of them is at least 190 yards. They range between 190 and I think 254 on the scorecard, with the average being about 216. You look at that, and that's about the same length of Bay Hill, which is the second longest par threes on average on the PGA Tour they see all season. I think that approach play from about 175 to 225 yards is going to be a key indicator of success. And when I was combing through the players who were most successful in those situations this year, it didn't give me much clarity because the best two players are Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. So maybe we're in for a chalky PGA Championship. It's been kind of a theme in recent years, with the exception of when Colin Morikawa won in the COVID year of 2020 of guys who were already major winners winning at PGAs. But yeah, I think the golf course is going to reward length, and I think the rainy conditions are really only going to enhance that trait. I'm hopeful, as Niall said, that maybe it'll dry out a little bit, and we'll see a little bit of that quickness in the greens as we get some better weather over the weekend. But initially, I think that you've got to really bank on guys who are going to be able to take advantage of being able to carry the ball a really long way.
Yeah, and even if you look back to 2014 leaderboard, it was McIlroy and Wiesberger first and second heading into Sunday, two of the biggest sluggers in the game back then. And obviously Mickelson ended up finishing second. And then behind him you had Stenson, Furyk and Fowler, slightly different profiles than the big hitters at the top of the leaderboard. But as Justin says there, I fully expect this to go the way of a longer hitter. The only kind of shorter one that comes into the equation could be Colin Morikawa. There's a few risk reward holes there at Valhalla, and we saw at Harding Park just how good he is on a couple of reachable par fours and how accurate he can be off the tee, which may help his scores over the week. But yeah, I fully expect this to go to the way of someone almost within the top 25 on tour and PGA Tour distance.
And now, what do you think we can expect from the scoring? Because looking back to 2014, Rory won on 16 under ahead of Phil on 15 under, a couple of players at 14 as well. So the scoring was decent that week. Is it weather dependent? If it's soft, will we see scores like that again, or do you think it'll play a bit tougher?
Yeah, well, I think the rain on a soft golf course makes for simply easier golf, and that could bring in to play some golfers who are not quite in as good a form as you would expect, and some guys who you wouldn't really consider. It's worth remembering that even at Augusta, Max Homa was matched at triple figures on the exchanges here before the off, which is crazy to think if someone said that to you at the start of the year. So someone matched it at 100 to 1 or bigger on the exchange obviously went very close. He was laying a couple back going into the last day, and I think we were all maybe kicking ourselves that we hadn't backed Max Homa at such big prices. Morikawa was another who went well in the Masters at big prices. So it can happen that the rain just dumped on the golf course will create chances for the likes of Victor Hovland, for example, who hasn't been playing that well. But in terms of scoring, I think we'll definitely see more towards the scores that Brooks Koepka shot. He shot 16 under when he won at Belle Reeve. I think, Morikawa at Harding Park, that was a totally different type of test, but I definitely think we'll see double figures under par this week.
I will say that since the switch from August to May, the scoring has been vastly different at the PGA Championship. If you go back looking since 2014, the PGA Championship's in August, so 14 to 18, and then 2020 when Morikawa won, there were an average of 46 players under par for the week in those events. You go to May, it's just 11. So the scoring has been pretty different when it comes to comparing August and May. Weather conditions a little bit different. I don't know what in Louisville, Kentucky, in sticky, kind of humid expected weather, maybe that trend flips a little bit, but just something to keep in mind is that since they made the switch on the calendar, the scoring's been a little bit tougher in May.
Well, let's get into the field now. We've spoken about the course and who may fit it. And looking at the oddschecker grids now, where you can find all the best prices and the place terms on there as well. Scotty Scheffler is the 9-2 favourite. Rory McIlroy 15-2. Brooks Koepka 16-1. Xander Schauffele 16-1. Ludwig Oberg is 18-1. John Rahm 20-1. Bryson DeChambeau 28-1. Colin Morikawa 28-1. Homer 35-1. Joaquin Niemann 40-1. These are all best prices, and they probably come with fewer place terms. But as I say, on the oddschecker grids, you can see the prices and the place terms there. And as we talk through the players, I'll give an indication of who is the best place really to go for these if you want those extra places and the big prices too. But it was always going to take a big performance for us not to start with Scotty Scheffler when talking through the top end of the leaderboard. But I think we have to start with Rory McIlroy. And it feels bizarre that just a month ago, the three of us were chatting and I said, it kind of feels like McIlroy is going into Augusta under the radar. Well, I think he basically is the radar this weekend, having put in a scintillating performance at Quail Hollow, double bogeying 18 for his winning margin to be trimmed from 7 to 5 after one of the most incredible stretches of holes after the turn I've ever seen on Sunday evening. Now, the narrative is here for McIlroy. He's won going into an event at the course where he won his last major in 2014. He is someone who seems to really relish playing at certain golf courses as well in the past. What kind of a chance do you think Rory comes into this, not only to topple Scotty Scheffler, but go ahead and win his first major in such a long time?
Yeah, he's obviously got a huge chance, and he improves so much with confidence, and I think that was evident there at the weekend. It was just absolutely flying out of him. It was almost like the McIlroy of old that we used to love watching. But it's worth just cautioning that he's arrived at majors 7 times since he won here at Valhalla off the back of a victory, and he's yet the better 5th place. Now, whether any of those 7 times he's won, he was playing quite as well as what he did there at Quail Hollow at the weekend, I don't know. But he's obviously arriving with a ton of confidence, and it looked like the shackles were off. And I think that the event in Zurich with Shane Lowry maybe helped that. I think that the change in his schedule, to play that event, which I think was agreed upon, basically over a drink on time with his mate, that it's proved to be a huge help to him. I think going there to a PGA Tour event where there's little or no pressure on them helped the 2 Irishmen, and then obviously winning has given McIlroy another boost of confidence, and he goes to a course that he knows and loves so well, that he's won on before, and throws in a performance like that. So it mirrors a little bit of the way that he came in to Valhalla in 2014 off the back of winning an Open Championship and being strong favourite. That it's kind of similar this week, so there's no negatives surrounding him, and he could easily do the job. I won't be betting him, but if we watch him win, I'll be happy to watch him do it whilst losing money.
I mean, Justin, just like looking at that performance last weekend as well, like if you told Xander Schauffele on Thursday morning he was going to shoot 12 under and that only 20 players or 19 players were going to be under par over the whole weekend. I think he'd have been marching his way towards the trophy there and then. But to lose by 5, I mean, this wasn't just dominance over the next, in behind the field. It was a total and utter obliteration of the field, wasn't it? How do you see that performance going into this weekend in comparison to, say, a Scotty Scheffler who's only been beaten by one golfer in his last 5 starts?
Yeah, I mean, so Rory was 8 shots ahead of third place. Just an enormous chasm that he was able to create between himself and the field with that unbelievable performance on Sunday. I'm kind of in the boat with Niall on the fact that we've kind of seen this before going into a major championship. We've seen him come off victories and have great form, and he reels us in with his great performance. I remember before the Masters telling you guys that at the Valero Texas Open, he had his best stroke gain approach week in X number of years. It was really promising going into the Masters and a place where the approach play is of absolute paramount importance. I kind of have that feeling with the putter because he had the Sunday at Wells Fargo. He gained more strokes on the greens than he has in almost 2 years. I think it was back at the U.S. Open in the final round a couple of years ago when Matthew Fitzpatrick was the last time he gained that many strokes on the greens in a round. But you look back over the last several starts, and since the beginning of the Players' Championship, Rory's a top 25 putter on the PGA Tour. That's a stark improvement. I got to talk a little bit via text with Brad Faxon yesterday, his instructor, and he says he's been really encouraged by what Rory's been doing on the greens as well. So, yeah, look, he's got so much great history at Quail Hollow. He's such a perfect fit at that golf course because he's able to use his driver to the utmost. It's basically the most driver-centric golf course that they play all year on the PGA Tour, and that's been reflected in the outrageous amount of success Rory's had there over the years. There are a lot of similarities between Valhalla and Quail Hollow that I think are going to just benefit how Rory McIlroy attacks a golf course on the whole. And you come in there coupled with that form, and I might have a wager on Rory. I might be a little bit tempted to go that route. The value obviously is not going to be very strong with him so high on the board and so many people loving the way that he's coming into this championship. But it's tough not to like what we've seen the last couple of starts. And it's not just coming off one win at Valhalla. He won the Open, Bridgestone, went to Valhalla in 2014 at the PGA and won. Same thing here. I know the Zurich Classic paired with Shane Lowry, a little bit different than winning the Open, but 2 wins heading into Valhalla. The stars are aligned just a little bit if you're into that.
You mentioned the putter there too, and it's interesting because even looking back here, the 2014, it was dominated kind of by the bigger hitters towards the very top of the leaderboard anyway. But what separated them was actually what happened on the greens. McIlroy putted very well that week. I think 4 or 6 of the top 10 or something were inside the top 10 in strokes gained putting for the week. And that could just make the difference this week. Because the guys, longer or shorter hitters, they're going to miss fairways. I'd be far prefer to be on the longer hitting guys who are not quite as accurate, but they hit it in the rough. And the test just might, I don't think the greens are very tough, but it might just become a slight bit of it's crazy to say this about a major championship, but a slight bit of a putting contest because the test is the same for everybody going forward. It's just bombs away and try and get it on the green after that, and it could turn out to be the best putters that actually win the week.
To that point now, the numbers back it up. In 2014, the players who finished in the top 10 gained more than 35% of their strokes for the week on the greens. That was about 3 to 4% more than the PGA Tour average. Doesn't sound like a big gap, but that is a pretty significant distance between what we see week in, week out on the PGA Tour. So you're right, it was a separating factor. When everybody's facing the same test with ball striking, sometimes that can be the one that separates the winners from the contenders.
Be interested to see what Rory sings on the karaoke machine if he comes up with a win here on Sunday evening. Moving on to the man who, of course, tops the market and is the Masters champion, and pretty fair to say stands, looking in from the outside right now, as good a chance of winning a calendar year slam as anyone has done, having won that event, given how dominant he's been recently. As I say, in his last 4 starts, only one golfer has beaten him. That was the Jaeger bomb in Houston a few weeks ago. Scotty Scheffler, they've announced now that he is a father. The baby has arrived, so that kind of has taken the doubts about his presence before Augusta, should he have to leave the course if his wife went into labour, are done with. How much sleep has Scotty Scheffler got? Well, you'd think he's probably got enough in the bank in order to pay for someone to look after the new one at certain times. it's hard to make a case against him, isn't it, Niall? And at 9-2, basically the same price he went off at Augusta, he'll certainly have his backers.
Yeah, although I do think that like a PGA Championship such as this is a slightly more difficult event to win than the Masters, given the way that place suits him as well. There's nothing really that we haven't mentioned before. There's he's a 9-2 poke. It'll interest many. You can kind of one and done it. You back him and nobody else, or you could even Dutch him and McIlroy and hope for the best. But we always talk about the nappy factor and the boost it gives some new parents, but what kind of a boost does it give to somebody who was already the best by a country mile before that? You know what I mean? I don't know. Could it only be a negative? Quite possibly. So I think just maybe a lack of tournament golf over the last couple of weeks might just be the only negative, and it's the main reason probably to steer away from back in the 9-2 again.
But Justin, you think you might go and do it again?
I don't see any reason why you can't think that Scottie Scheffler is going to do this week. It's just, what can you say? The ball striking numbers are just through the roof. They're unbelievable, and there's a reason why.
I'm clutching at straws, Justin. I'm clutching.
Yeah, I know. It's the easy answer, right? Because I posted a tweet the other day, and it was just some of the things that Scottie Scheffler leads the PGA Tour in. There's a term in American baseball called the Triple Crown. That's when you lead for a season, and it's kind of an old school term, but batting average, home runs, and RBI, 3 big offensive statistics. Scottie leads in par 3 scoring, par 4 scoring, and par 5 scoring. I can't remember, other than Tiger in 2000, I don't even remember seeing that as a possibility for a player to do that. The fact that he leads in strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach, greens and regulation, and proximity to the hole. Oh, by the way, I know strokes gained putting is a better evaluator than this stat, but he also leads the tour now in putts per green and regulation. That's not fair. That's ridiculous. And couple that with the fact that if you look at the majors over the last 3 years, and those rankings all are first and everything as well. Look, this guy is head and shoulders above everybody. I don't know if you guys have the same experience as dads in the hospital with a newborn over there as we have here, but they give the dad the worst bed you can possibly have. It's like this half sofa.
You get a bed?
No, not really a bed.
It's like a half sofa thing.
Yeah.
But listen, it's like it's terrible, and your back is a mess for 3 or 4 days. I say all this to say that might be the only thing that could slow Scottie down, is if he had a bad experience with that, and that's bothering him, because
do you not remember players when he couldn't move his neck and he still managed to win there? So
yeah, good point. Look, and the fact that it's been 3 months and he missed a putt to force a playoff, and that's the only time that he hasn't won the golf tournament.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable run he's on. It's been a joy to watch, and I'll just give it away now. I'm picking him to win, and I really, it's not particularly close for me. I think that he's as strong a favorite as you can imagine, going back to maybe, I don't know, let's say Tiger in 2009, around that time. It's unbelievable what he's been doing.
Yeah, it really is hard to pick holes in him, and I'm kind of wondering why I haven't been all over him for the Masters. I guess in my mind, we watched Scottie go around Augusta a year ago and tear it to pieces and not hold a putt, and you could see then that the course fit was so obvious. Whereas I guess there's an element here where you don't know how he's going to go at Valhalla. That's kind of me, I guess, clutching at straws like Niall. But it's going to be a case where
maybe it comes down to the putting contest that I mentioned, and then
perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, but even then, that hasn't been too bad recently.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
We better move on. We've got loads to get through before we've got to get through Niall's picks as well, which are coming up shortly. Got to talk about Brooks Koepka though, who is third on the grid, 16-1. He is with a few firms, including Skybet, who go 8 places. Brooks is one of those. Justin, where he's won this event 3 times. He won it last year. Like, if you were to price up Brooks Koepka based on that alone, then he might still remain value. But if you were to price up Brooks Koepka based on the golf that he plays consistently, then there'd probably be a 0 at the end of his price there. Like, how do you assess someone's chances who is just a totally different golfer when it comes to these events?
Yeah, and I think I said this before the Masters. He's a guy where you don't even really take into account recent form on back in the day, the PGA Tour, now Live Golf. But to hear his quotes when he won in Singapore saying that, yeah, I was kind of embarrassed by the way I played at the Masters, kind of lit a fire under me. I mean, that's got to give you even more reason to believe in Brooks Koepka this week. I think back to a couple years ago, Jon Rahm ended up obviously winning the Masters, but Brooks won the last live event going into the Masters 2 years ago at Orange County National outside of Orlando, which is, of course, I've played with beer and friends. It's not exactly a stern test of golf, but he showed that he was in good enough form to beat some of the better players in the world over there with that victory. And we didn't know how much stock to put into it. I put a little bit into it now because look, he dang nearly won that thing at Augusta National a couple years ago. So I don't withhold credit or anything anymore at this point for a player who wins a live tournament coming into a major championship. Look, he just hits a different gear when he gets to these things. And I know it's anecdotal and almost cliche at this point, but he's just a different guy when he gets to the major championships. And you couple that with the fact that this is going to be a place where you got to carry the ball a long way to find success. Look, Brooks Koepka is going to be, he's justifiably really high on that board based on what he's done in the major championship. So in this era, he is, I mean, I think if you pair it back now to just since 2020, Scotty's probably got the title. But if you look over the last decade, he's clearly the alpha performer in the game in major championships. And, like he's had a spat of inconsistency in some of these big events over the last couple of years, but he showed he's still the man to beat when he gets to a PGA Championship last year at Oak Hill.
It's worth noting that as well in Singapore as well at Sentosa. That's on Zoysia grass, and it could prove to be quite good preparation, that event, for those live guys. So I know I've backed a couple of them anyway, but I do think that could be better preparation than what we've seen recently on the PGA Tour.
And is there a shout? I mean, it's almost surprising that he's pretty much the same price to win this as he was at Augusta, despite the fact that since then, as you say, he's won in Singapore and he's got a top 10 in Adelaide as well. I mean, would you be keener on him here, Niall, than you were a month or so ago?
I just think his price is about right, Yeah. I don't think there's much value in it. Obviously, since the Masters, McIlroy's improved. He's won twice, so there's an element there which suggests that Koepka's price should stay the same. I think the market just has the correct hold on him. He'll interest plenty this week, given his record in these type of events and on these courses. So, yeah, he could easily go well and be there come Sunday afternoon.
How about Jon Rahm, who is attracting a lot of attention given his price, over double the price for Rory McIlroy this weekend. He's 20-1 best price. That's with BetVictor. They're only a quarter of the 5 places. You're going to probably get 16-1 if you want the extra places with Sky Bet, Bet365 and the like there. It wasn't a great defence, to put it mildly, at Augusta, and he still doesn't look overly happy, I wouldn't say, on the golf course right now.
Yeah, that was just the point that I was going to make. It looks to me pure happiness. And although I mentioned earlier about Max Homa drifting towards 100-1 in the Masters before the off win only, and I was kicking myself that I didn't get on. Some of these golfers, when they drift to big prices, whether they're playing good golf or not, or sometimes auto bets, Hovland is getting towards that direction where I think, just 1 ounce of sunlight could make him worth a bet, and there was a bit of sunlight there at the weekend as well. The same kind of applies to Jon Rahm, but I don't think he's gone to a big enough price yet, to be honest. He doesn't look happy. He doesn't look content. I think the amount of live events that he has played, he should have won one already. Let's get that clear, and he hasn't. And he hasn't come close in many of them. He obviously has been top 10 in plenty of them, but he hasn't been firing towards the leaders on the back 9 of these events. So I'm quite disappointed in what he's shown, and more than anything, I think Rahm could struggle when his head's not there, and I don't think it's here at the minute. So he's an easy pass for me, even at the odds.
Justin, what do you make of Rahm's chances this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a guy who you can tell his emotions. He wears them very outwardly, and it was apparent at Augusta National that he was kind of frustrated with the state of whether it's his decision he made or where his game was. He wasn't a happy guy. It didn't seem like it. And my question is just which Jon Rahm shows up. I think maybe he sees what Brooks Koepka did in Singapore and the way he responded, saying that lit a fire under me, and maybe it's a brand new Rahm that comes in and he's got a different attitude coming into it. But until I see that going into the week. I'm really interested to watch his press conference before the championship starts. That might give us a little bit more light because, Rahm has always been very forthright with the public, with the media. So it's going to be interesting to see where his head's at, what headspace he's in going into this championship. There's still little flashes of him being Jon Rahm, though. I know he hasn't won, but he leads the LIV Tour in birdie average this year. He's high up in the metrics that they've made available publicly, in terms of some of the underlying stats. We don't have a ton of them, but, what they've shown is that, he's still, one of the better players on that tour. I think he's second in their points list this year, despite not having won yet. So, yeah, no, to me, I'm going to pass on him simply because of what we saw at Augusta National, but he's a really interesting case study going into the championship to see where his head's at and what that attitude's like coming into Valhalla.
Yeah, indeed. A couple more that we should tick off before we get into the picks. You mentioned Victor there, Niall, and just to kind of continue on that line, he is now talking of Rahm's price being unthinkable a while back. Hovland's now best price 45 to 1. You're getting 40 to 1, 10 places with Paddy Power. Like, when does that become a bet? Because obviously his touch around the greens, which he kind of discovered around the turn of the year when things were going so well for him, has kind of deserted him. But there were, as you mentioned, signs, especially tee to green, and also his around the greens wasn't too bad last weekend. When does he become a bet in your mind?
Yeah, well, it was his best ball striking performance of 2024, I think, at Quail Hollow last week, and he has been suffering in that department, but not quite as badly as maybe, his ball striking hasn't been good all year, but it hasn't been a total disaster. His short game definitely has deserted him in 2024. He has been struggling in most departments, but that was a fair sign last week at Quail Hollow, and maybe it'll just take another stepping stone before he becomes a bet here in the next number of weeks. But he certainly came on my radar, and I was tempted this week after that effort at Quail Hollow. I think if he gets towards, I think he wasn't he up there on day one at the Masters as well? He quite scored well, because I remember making a tweet that, a Victor Hovland meme about, getting a price about himself for the Masters, playing so bad all year to get a price about himself for the Masters. And as soon as I tweeted that, it went south for the rest of the event. But I do think all his talent still remains with him, and I think he will get back to where he was. And last week was a good sign. So we're around 40 to 1 mark with 10 places on offer. It was tempting, I have to say.
And what about Xander Schauffele, Justin? It was all the rage going into Augusta. He put in a pretty good performance without ever really challenging. It looked again like he was going to get over the line over the weekend. I don't, a level par round on Sunday wasn't great, but when you consider what beat him, you can maybe forgive him a little bit. Would you still have concerns about his ability getting over the line?
Yeah, I've got a stat about Xander Schauffele that I think is really emblematic, kind of where he is with the game right now. He has 8 straight top 20 finishes in major championships. Longest active streak of any player. That's really hard to do. It's really impressive. And in those 8 events, he has not finished better than tied for 8. I mean, that's kind of the perfect embodiment of where Xander is right now, is that his floor is so high. He's such a well-balanced player, analytically, statistically, his approach to everything for about 3.5 days. And he just hasn't been able to break through into the winner's circle. And I think, that number about his consistency in the majors, but not, really truly being a contender. I know at LACC at the US Open last year, going into Sunday, he had a shot, and then I think he left 2 in the bunker early on in that final round and kind of derailed him. But he really, other than that, in that run of consistently, making the cut and being somewhat in the mix going into the weekend, he just hasn't been able to push it over the line. I got to see it at this point. So talented. I do think he's going to break through and win a major championship at some point. But I would have loved to have seen. I think my perspective of him changes completely is totally different if he has a different Sunday and is able to overtake Rory McIlroy at Quail Hollow. But it's just been more of the same when he's gotten into these fights with these elite guys on Sunday, and whether it's Scotty or Rory, Scotty at the Players Championship, Rory last week, he hasn't been able to get over the line.
No, but did you find him easy to leave off the list this week, having backed him at Augusta?
Yeah, well, we backed him at 16 to 1, 8 places at Augusta, and that's like 12s, 14s now. It's slightly shorter. McIlroy's improved. Scheffler hasn't regressed. Koepka's won. So yeah, I think he's quite easily passed over at that price. Even though he's probably booked for another top 20 finish again. But again, disappointing just at the weekend. But kind of like Justin, I think it's important not to put like too much of a negative narrative on that there, because he's still beating the majority of fields every time he tees it up, and eventually he's won plenty already. Don't forget, it's just a couple of years, and don't forget Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, they're all in the same camp. They haven't won in the guts of a couple of years either. So yeah, Xander gets an awful lot of stick for that, but I think it'll change relatively soon.
And before we get onto your picks, Niall, what about Ludwig Åberg, who we've spoken about a little bit already, who was second at Augusta in his first ever major, who then followed up with a brilliant performance at Harbour Town on a course you wouldn't necessarily think would suit. He's 18-1 going into this weekend with Bet365 and Sky Bet, which, of course, is eye-wateringly short generally for a player making just their second major start. But I think there's probably a fair case to be made that there might be a bit of juice in it.
Yeah, everybody knows how much I love him, and it's important just to let the listeners know that I did put him up at 25-1 at the start of the year in January for this PGA. So that's not the only reason, but he was the main reason why he was left off the week this week, because I've already got him covered, and I'm quite happy to have him covered at 25-1, because going into 18-1 now with the slight knee injury, if any listeners haven't heard, he pulled out last week. With difficulty from his knee, and the team said there was no pain in the knee, but nevertheless, reports from the course yesterday on practice was that he was holding the knee regularly during the first number of holes that he played and bending down to it and all. So maybe it's a bit more of a problem than what was initially thought last week. So I'm happy to be on at 25-1. I wouldn't want to cash out now, but I wouldn't particularly like to be going in at 18-1 off the back of this news about his knee.
How do you assess his chances, Justin?
Yeah, my question is the knee as well. I mean, I thought initially going into the week, maybe he's played a lot of golf and they've got a knee injury, and maybe this is how he gets out of the elevated event, give him a little bit more rest going into the major championship. But it looks like it was a little bit of a real issue and something we got to take into account. That's really the only reason to not like him going into the week, in my opinion. I mean, the inexperience obviously is, you throw it out the window with this guy, whether it was going into the Ryder Cup, having never played a major championship before, and playing so well, or at the Masters, obviously in his first major championship, the only guy that could beat him is the guy that's beating everyone on earth every week in Scotty Scheffler. So he's got the kind of ball flight and ball striking ability that you'd absolutely love at a venue like this, or a U.S. Open setup too. Yeah, it's just the question with me is just that health of that knee, and how restrictive is it going to be on a week where it's going to be stop and start. I guarantee you there's going to be at least one day where you're finishing up a round the next day in terms of just the sheer size of the field and the weather we're expecting. And does that play into account too? Some long days for guys who've got some nagging injuries. But yeah, it's really just the knee that's a question for me for Ludwig.
Just the knee, the question there. Now let's get on to your selections. Your column went out live on oddschecker and on the app yesterday, so these are out there. We'll package them together. So the top 2 points each way, Max Homer at 30-1, and 2 points each way, Bryson DeChambeau at 28-1. As we said, two players that went very well in the last major. What has you fancying their chances this time around?
Yeah, well, Max Homer's overcome that, the major negatives this last number of months now, finishing 10th at Hoylake and then 3rd at the Masters. I don't necessarily think, obviously we looked at a good performance in a major for a stepping stone to the next one, but more importantly, I think being in the final group on Saturday at the Masters and then the penultimate group on Sunday at the Masters is absolutely massive. That's you in the heat of battle for 2 solid days at the year's biggest major. Similar to Matt Fitzpatrick when he was in the final group at the PGA before winning the US Open next year. These things can really, really help. Not just a good finish, but being in the final couple of groups over the weekend. We know how long and straight he is off the tee, and the clutch putting as well. I've been quite keen to get a couple of really clutch putters on the staking plan this week, and Max Home was one of them. We've seen what he's done in the Ryder and President's Cup. And I just think a major win is on the way. Bryson, that you mentioned there, obviously round one lead at Augusta. Not by chance, as I said, that it was the softest and easiest day of the week. He will be suited by the rain here. He'll be suited by the golf course becoming longer because of the weather. And I just think double the price of Brooks Koepka was far too tempting for somebody who's like 3 top 10s in his last 6 majors. He's a regular feature on these major leaderboards now, even since he went to LIV. So yeah, I just thought of the two between him and Koepka, DeChambeau looked that ounce more value.
And you're a fan of well, you think Bryson's got a good chance going to this weekend as well, Justin?
I do. I want to go back to Niall's point that's great about Max Homa and the pressure cooker, and how I think sometimes when you're looking and trying to make picks, you see a third place finish in the previous major and you think, oh, this has got some value to it. Not all third place finishes are created equal. There's a big difference between being in pressure, being, you know, part of the narrative for the entire championship, like Max Homa was at the Masters, and, you know, firing a Sunday 66 when your tee time was at 9:30 a.m. and ending up ending up
Phil
third place.
Mickelson,
So
2023 Augusta.
So I love that point that Niall made. I'm keen on Bryson as well. You just look at where he's had the most success in some of these major championships and these big long setups. I think about when he won at Winged Foot. He's a guy who, you know, we always talk about his, you know, the distance off the tee being a key thing for him, but he hits the other clubs longer too, right? So these long par threes are going to be key this week. They remind me a lot of Bay Hill, and he's won at Bay Hill before with those really long approach shots where approaches from 175 to 225 are really key. So I'm really high on Bryson this week, and I love the comparison to Koepka. To me, there's a lot of similarities between those two games. Their past success in major championships, not quite equal, but I do really love Bryson's profile going on at this golf course and think he's a really good value.
And then now moving back onto your staking plan again, next on the list, we've got Wyndham Clark, 1.5 points each way at 40 to 1, and Joaquin Niemann, keeping the faith with Niemann after Augusta, 1.5 points each way at 33 to 1.
Yeah, first of all, Clark, I was one of the lucky ones who managed to get him at the US Open, backed him at 60 to 1. So I think from what happened there, a non-major winner being 60 to 1 for that US Open that he won, we're seeing 40 to 1 now with everything that's happened since. I think he's a bit of a forgotten man in this market. It surprises me how big of a price he is. He missed a cut at the Masters, obviously, but that was his debut there, and we can definitely forgive him that. Third at Harbour Town the following week, I thought was really talented. It goes to show you how versatile a golfer Wyndham Clark is. He obviously hits the ball a mile, and Harbour Town just doesn't suit golfers. They got notoriously down the years anyway. So yeah, I'm just surprised that he's drifted to 40 to 1. Obviously, finishing down the field in the Wells Fargo contributes to that too. But he's defending champion there, and you could almost forgive him that there too. For, you know, it's difficult to defend, and he's still in the early throes of his career. So long and straight off the tee, plays these demanding long golf courses very well, as was seen second at Bay Hill early on in the year, second at Sawgrass. So for someone in his last 6 starts, 2 runners up, Sawgrass, Bay Hill, third at Harbour Town, coming to one of these long major championship golf courses. In fact, the last one he won the US Open last year. So, God, I'm just surprised how big he's gone, 40 to 1, when I think he was shorter than that for the Masters, his debut there as well, his debutant struggle. So, he was his second one that I was quite happy to get in, another really clutch putter down the stretch of these golf tournaments. I think he'll be a massive asset to Team USA in the team events. We saw the way the putts that he held when he won the US Open, especially when he got into trouble. I think it was a par 5 where he hit it left and had to drop, overshot the green, got down in 2 from then. He showed real guts when winning that US Open, and I think everything that he's shown since just doesn't add up to him being 40 to 1 here. And again, I just didn't want to forget about Joaquin Niemann. My claims that when we last on this podcast that he was in the top 5 golfers in the world. I still stick by it. I would like him to prove it on the big stage, in the majors. Top 25 the Masters, didn't disgrace himself, obviously. 3rd at Adelaide and 7th in Singapore since. Obviously hits the ball a mile, which will help this week. I'm just looking to get these guys on the staking plan to hit the ball far. 3rd and 6th in 5 appearances at the Memorial, another Jack Nicklaus design, which could prove a good form guide this week. So yeah, for someone who I consider just still at the top of the game, I didn't want to forget about him at the prices that I advertised yesterday at 40 to 1.
Justin, what are your thoughts on those two?
This just struck me as Niall was talking about Wyndham's high finishes at Bay Hill, at the Players, at Harbour Town. Who won all 3 of those golf tournaments?
Yeah.
Scotty Scheffler. And who we've been talking about is just far and away above everybody. Think about the perception we'd have of Wyndham Clark this season if it weren't for that, giant birdie-making elephant in the corner over there who just keeps crushing everyone. I just thought that was an interesting thing to come across. Look, as impressive as Scotty performing well at Harbour Town was, I was really impressed by Wyndham as well, because it just doesn't fit the profile of where he had success before. A totally unique, different golf course. It really speaks to his growth as a player. I love that he's always been, since he got on tour, a really good putter, but his strokes gained tee to green, 2021, 155, 2022, 130, 28th last year. He's up to 15th now. Like, this is a guy who is steadily improving and becoming more well-rounded in his game. As it comes to Niemann, I got to see it on the big stage. To what Niall said about, I got to see it in the big stage. 20 previous major championship starts. He's never finished in the top 15. I do think he's one of the most talented players in the world, though, and that he will, have that breakout week. Could it be this week? Absolutely. On a softer golf course where length is going to be rewarded, as we've talked about ad nauseum here. This could be conceivably the week, but for me, I've got to see it on the biggest stage before I invest any money in it.
But one player you have liked the look of in recent weeks, Justin, is Ben Yan, who seems to have learnt how to putt.
It's a terrifying prospect for the rest of the world. This is a man who is one of the best ball strikers in the world year in, year out, has gotten to be really long off the tee, which has been really interesting to see develop over the last several seasons and even more recently. But Ben Yan led the field last week at Wells Fargo in strokes gained putting, a sentence I didn't think was possible for me to form with my brain and say. This is a guy who has really struggled with his putter throughout his career. It's what's kept him from being a multiple-time winner on the PGA Tour. He, of course, won that BMW Championship years ago when he was so young. But he's really intriguing to me this week because he's a guy who has the distance. And if he's figured something out with his putter, he could be a really sneaky good value this week at Valhalla.
Yeah, Ben Yan is 60 to 1 with a few firms going 7 places there. You've got Unibet and a couple of others.
I didn't think he was. I thought his number was a little higher.
It's the price over here that puts you off. I was looking at it too, going, I would love to back Ben Yan, but I just can't bring myself to back him at those prices.
Yeah, I wasn't looking at the price when I said that.
No, well, he was double that a week ago. That's the thing. He's kind of well found in the market now, but I'm still seeing a lot of people making a case for him now at the price he is. So, been 2 brilliant performances back to back coming into the weekend, and then a couple of darts, big prices. Niall, make up your staking plan. A point each way on Bhatia at 125 to 1, and 0.5 of a point each way on Taylor Pendrith at 225 to 1.
Yeah, like one of the key trends in this PGA is having a win earlier on in the season. Now, obviously, it's changed a bit since it moved to May, but there's still been a fair few since anyway. But you go down the years, and the surprise winners of this event might not be so surprising to, freaks like us who love the game. You know what I mean? Bradley in 2011, when he won the PGA, had won earlier on in the season. Wei Yang had won the Honda earlier on in the season in 2009. Rich Beam, when he won in 2002, had won the week before the International. And David Toms in 2001 had won earlier on in that season as well. So I don't think it's a bad ploy looking at everybody who's won the PGA Tour, finding huge prices on the exchanges and blah, blah, and backing a few. Actually, Bhatia is the best one for me of the lot. simply because his golf lately has just been absolutely tremendous. Second strokes gain approach in Houston, first at San Antonio, second at Harbour Town. His irons are in absolutely ridiculous form. And this is now redundant, especially from when I wrote it in my preview on Sunday evening into Monday morning, that from a true strokes gain perspective, his win in Texas was the best of the year. That has now been usurped by McIlroy at Quail Hollow. But even Daily Golf considered his win at Texas better than Scotty Scheffler's win at the Masters. And it's not surprising, seeing he beat McIlroy by 9 shots that week. He beat Fleetwood and Matsuyama, Fleetwood and Matsuyama by 12. He were in the top 10 as well. It was a truly astonishing performance, especially the way he managed to hang on, because it looked like it was a foregone conclusion at the weekend. And managing still to win that, the way Denny McCarthy stayed with him. Maybe McCarthy's is equally as ridiculous performance that week, going on the same score and getting into a playoff that week. And Taylor Prender's obviously another one. It took him a long time to get the victory, but he won with a fair bit of help from Ben Coles in the 72nd a couple of weeks ago. But he's really hot right now. He followed it up with a 10th top 10 at Quail Hollow, and he's got the perfect game for Valhalla too. He hits the ball in absolute miles, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the mix again. Whether a tall order to win it, obviously, but I could definitely see him in the placings. And another one who I haven't backed, but along similar lines that you could back as well at big prices, triple figures, is Jake Knapp. Now I backed him in Mexico when he won. He was very nervous and steery during the opening 9 holes, got it together on the back 9, and then I backed him again a couple of weeks ago when he was around the lead. Done exactly the same thing as what he did in Mexico, got steery off the tee, but he couldn't get it together. He missed too many fairways, too costly. It's strange the way he hits the ball on Sundays, really, really strange, because he looks like a Rolls Royce from Thursday to Saturday, and then turns up at Sunday in contention, and the swing slows down. It's a complete mess. But nevertheless, he performed well at Torrey Pines earlier on in the year as well, another long, tough golf course. So Jake Knapp's another PGA Tour winner to consider this week that I haven't got on the staking plan.
Jake Knapp 250 to 1. That's with Sky Bet, who are 8 places. You can still get a little bit at 225 to 1 with Betfred, who are also 10 places, which is completely out of line with the rest of the oddschecker grid. So if you're quick, try and get that. Niall immediately trying to find a Betfred account as we speak. And Akshay Bhatia, 125 to 1 pretty much across the board. Anyone else you want to give a positive mention to, Justin?
I just want to ask if Niall has hacked into my laptop and is reading my notes, because Jake Knapp is another name I have written down, and it goes back to that statistic, the approach play from 175 to 225. He's among the leaders in average proximity to the hole in that statistic this season. He's been one of the best players in that regard. So you mentioned, too, the great finish at Torrey Pines, another difficult, long golf course. And Taylor Pendrith as well is a guy whose profile, and we mentioned the help he got on that last hole to win from Ben Coles right down the street from me here in McKinney, Texas. But look, the profile he has for that golf course is perfect. He's a guy who hits it a mile. I loved his inclusion on the President's Cup team a couple years ago. I thought he was going to have a breakout week. He didn't play that great that week, but I just think that growing more and more familiar and comfortable in those experiences, getting that victory, he's a guy who's a super talented ball striker, and I think there's some value there. I'm not going to pick him to win, but I could definitely see him finishing in the top 10 with the form he's shown. So he and Jake Knapp are 2 of the guys I had circled as well. Oh, and one other name we haven't mentioned yet. Recent major champion who over the last 3 years in the majors, 2nd in strokes gained putting, 3rd in strokes gained approach, 4th in strokes gained total. I know that the course doesn't necessarily profile to fit Cameron Smith, but the fact that we haven't said his name yet is a little bit off-putting to me. I think that he's a little bit of an overlooked guy in terms of just being on the LIV Tour now, maybe not having as much success in terms of getting in the winner's circle this season as we thought he might. But he's a guy that I think you can't discount. I know his price is probably way up there. I'm not looking at it right now, but
50 to 1.
He's someone who he's worth a mention for sure.
Cameron Smith 50 to 1. That's a perfect SpreadX and Sporting Index. Happy at the same price as Benny Arn.
Yeah, just consider those past major championship performances.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's definitely worth getting on board those PGA Tour winners though at big prices, and because I know, like when I mentioned those surprise winners down the years, And even when Todd Hamilton won the Open, I'm pretty sure he won earlier on that year as well. Was it maybe the Honda or something?
Yeah, I think he won Honda that year. Yeah.
The surprise winners of these major championships aren't so surprising. Really. And I know if Jake Knapp wins at the weekend, or actually Bhatia wins, my dad will text me going, "Never heard of him." You know what I mean? But they're the types you need to be on for these surprise PGA Tour winners. So when there is a surprise one, it'll probably be less surprising than a lot of people think.
And I hadn't thought about this now, but we're kind of due for one of those. We're kind of due for a guy to come out of nowhere and win a PGA Championship. You think about all the big
it wouldn't be out of
names
nowhere. This is what Niall's saying. It wouldn't be out of nowhere. It would be
right. No, you know what I mean. Like for my
but we're due one of them.
My buddy who's been watching golf for 3 years saying, "I don't know who this guy is." That's the out of nowhere. It's out of nowhere for us.
I had that with Brian Harmon last July. Not me. As in, I had friends saying, like, "Who's this guy?" I'm like, come on, he's been winning for 10 years now. But yeah, maybe we'll get it this time around, and we'll be able to.
The less said about that Open Championship, the better. We're putting that into the depths of hell.
I absolutely loved it. Thank you. For those of us who were on, it was great. For everyone else in the world, it was miserable. But yeah, we'll see. Well, fingers crossed. We've at least mentioned the name of the winner in this hour-long show. But thank you very much to Justin, as ever, for sharing his thoughts, and thank you to Niall. You can find Niall's column if you want to read up on his picks again on the oddschecker app or on the oddschecker website. That's up there. And yeah, check out Justin providing all the great stats for 21st Group and on Sky's coverage over the course of the weekend as well. Thank you to you both. Hopefully we'll chat again ahead of the next major coming up next month. But until then, if you are watching this or listening to this, make sure you download the oddschecker app where you can find all those best prices, bookie offers, free bets, and Niall's tips, amongst other tips, is straight to the app every single day and week, depending on the sport you're looking at. Go well, enjoy the weekend's golf, and please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.